The Lord instructed Moses and Aaron to tell the Israelites about the animals they could eat, including those with a divided hoof and cud. Some animals, such as camels, hyraxes, rabbits, and pigs, were ceremonially unclean for them. They were also forbidden to eat their meat or touch their carcasses. For creatures in the water of the seas and streams, they were allowed to eat any animal with fins and scales, but not those without fins and scales. These creatures were considered unclean and should not be eaten. Birds that were considered unclean were the eagle, vulture, black kite, raven, horned owl, screech owl, gull, hawk, little owl, cormorant, great owl, white owl, desert owl, osprey, stork, heron, hoopoe, and bat. Flying insects that walk on all fours were also considered unclean. Some flying insects like locusts, katydids, crickets, and grasshoppers were allowed to be eaten, but all other flying insects with 4 legs were considered unclean. The Israelites were also forbidden to touch their carcasses, which would make them unclean until evening. They were also required to wash their clothes after eating one of their carcasses. Animals that moved along the ground were also considered unclean. When an animal died and fell on something, it was put in water and then washed. If a clay pot was used, everything was unclean and the pot was broken up. Any food that came into contact with water from such a pot was unclean. Casses falling on plants were considered unclean, but those on springs or cisterns for collecting water were clean. If an animal died, anyone who touched its carcass would be unclean until evening. In conclusion, the Israelites were prohibited from eating any creature that moved along the ground, whether it moved on its belly, walks on all fours, or on many feet. They were also instructed to be holy and not defile themselves by these creatures. The Lord's instructions were to distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between living creatures that could be eaten and those that could not.